The Strada Delle Dolomiti is a good mountain road that travels through a picturesque nature reserve amidst some of the most beautiful mountains in Europe. An enchanting region in northern Italy. Alto Adige, the southern Tyrol. The route leads to the centre of the Praxatal and to an idyllic woodland lake located deep in a mountain hollow. It's amazing how this region changes as each season comes and goes. The journey leads further up into the mountain area, where the snow remains until the late spring. These peaks are the essence of the Dolomites, the three Zinnen. For drivers, the winding roads take some negotiating. The gradients range between 8 and 14%. Long, drawn-out curves alternate with countless bends. The age-old charm of the historical city of Cortina d'Ampezzo is captivating. The facades of the chalets and hotels are richly decorated with frescos. And visible above everything else, the bell tower of the parish church. The southern Tyrol is a landscape that inspires the soul. For nature, traditions and country life. For hiking, wine and southern flair. The gleaming blue sky and glowing white snow are stunning. Such striking contrast is only found in nature. The view across the regal peaks of the Dolomites is an awesome sight. The mountain journey via cable car brings the steep mountain wall to within one's grasp. The edges and craters of the mountain are clear and sharp. This unique sight stimulates the senses and the thin air makes breathing more difficult. Several international films have featured this mountain scenery. The dry road makes the remainder of the journey a safe and pleasant experience. The Podoi Pass is 2,239 meters above sea level and is one of the most beautiful mountain passes in the Alps. The eastern slope has a wonderful view of the mountain peaks. Glittering and radiant, the snow extends across the landscape like an expensive carpet. The journey leads to a fairy tale kingdom of silent stone giants. One of the wonders of the Dolomites is its famous alpine radiance. This mountain world glows in the gentle light of evening. Alpe di Siusi, the Seiser Alm, contains a 50 square kilometer recreation area. In summer, hikers come to this high plateau, and in winter, it's popular with cross-country sportsmen. Europe's largest alpine meadow is located at an altitude of 2,000 meters above sea level. This area of mountain pastures and dense forest contains 350 kilometers of hiking paths. Horse-drawn sleighs are at the ready for local excursions. The tough and hardy Haflinger horses were originally bred for work in the mountains. The journey moves at a steady pace. On the difficult terrain, the steep incline is a challenge for both man and beast. Bolzano. This region's metropolis is situated in a valley basin that opens up to the south. The Late Gothic Bishop Church is a symbol of the city. In the adjoining Baroque chapel, there is a collection of priceless frescoes. The stone images and grotesque symbols on the facade indicate the great influence of the basic doctrines of the church. In the small alleys of the picturesque old town, the houses have arcades that are known as Lauben. Luxurious middle-class houses with artistically painted facades adorn the alleys of the old town, which was used by the Romans as a central resting place on their journeys to the north. The old fish market, with its well and stone slabs, has been well preserved and is always popular with shoppers and visitors alike. The Franciscan monastery, with its richly decorated cloister, is a place of silence and contemplation. The 700-year-old fruit market is full of colour and southern flair. In the parish church of Bolzano's city quarter of Greece is the famous altar of the Virgin Mary, created by Bruneck master sculptor Michael Pacher. It is probably the most important work of art in the southern Tyrol. This region is alive with customs and traditions, and its people are very religious. Valle Aurina-Ahrntal is a region of contrast. Nestling against a steep mountain slope, a shining white building stands out against a dark forest. Stift Marienberg. This Benedictine abbey is remote and tranquil. The crypt beneath the monastery contains a number of unique Romanic frescoes. Angels and apostles of Byzantine influence that date back to the time when the monastery was first built. The main village in the valley is probably also its most beautiful, Mal. It contains much of the cultural history of Valle Aurina-Ahrntal. The village community clings to its old traditions. Religious services and festivals are celebrated side by side, and a good time is usually guaranteed. In 1291, Glorenza was given the freedom of the city by the sovereign of the Tyrol, Meinhard II, for his tireless efforts to improve the city. A well-maintained city wall and fortified gate towers encircle the entire city. The intriguing ensemble of old middle-class houses and picturesque arcades has been lovingly restored and rebuilt. It still possesses the atmosphere of the Middle Ages. The impressive Castel Coira, the Chorburg, is located high above the village. In 1253, the bishops of Chur built a stronghold against the Macha family. The courtyard of the mighty complex and its lavishly painted arcades is one of Italy's best preserved treasures. The armoury contains the most important private collection of armour and weapons of the Middle Ages. Silandro is the largest and most important village in the valley. It's the equivalent of its capital. This is its administrative centre and contains several artistically decorated houses. On the steep mountain slopes above the village, a small chapel nestles against the rocks. The view is overwhelming and never fails to amaze those who come here. This is the beginning of the fruit and wine growing areas. The steep mountain slopes contain fertile terraces with an ingenious irrigation system. To nourish the fruit, there's an abundance of water. Castle Goldrhein played an important role in the history of civilization. It dates back to the 15th century and has been fully restored. Today, it's the setting for many local events. Many of this region's castles were built and inhabited by the so-called rural aristocracy. They were hard times. On its outer walls of the old chapel of Naturo are frescoes with Christian motifs that are considered to be the oldest examples of the German language in this region. Merano, the treasure garden of the southern Tyrol. A health resort that pulsates with joie de vivre. And also the medieval residence of the Tyrolean counts. The centre of this well-preserved medieval city is an indication of the colourful times that took place here from its foundation in 1317. The building elements of the St. Nicolaus Church range from Gothic to Baroque. They are the symbol of Merano. An 80-metre high tower and adjoining chapel complete this sacred ensemble. A tiny gate leads into the Schloss Tyrol, once the residence of powerful monarchs. Here, it's easy to imagine medieval times. A cable railway travels up the mountain above the city, the Monte Benedetto, from where the view is truly breathtaking. At the beginning of the 19th century, this was a popular destination with the European aristocracy. The luxury health spa was born. The entrance to the Val Sarantina is guarded by a castle. Beyond Bolzano, the valley becomes increasingly narrow. A fascinating mountain road travels past small, strategically located castles and passes through 22 tunnels that were built during the last century. Finally, the highest valley is reached. Small, picturesque churches and farmhouses alternate with lush green meadows and grazing cows. Valdurna is the last village at the end of the valley. Picturesque farmhouses lie along the tiny mountain creek. A small mountain lake reflects the blue of the sky and supplies the Sarn, which travels through the valley of the same name and flows down into the deeper lying valley basin of Bolzano. In the middle of the valley, there's a mountain road that leads to a high plateau. In the 17th century, the wealthy of Bolzano came here during the hot summer months. Since 1907, there has been a tram line from Klobenstein along a fairy tale mountain route up to Oberbolzano. Until the final station is reached, and where a modern cable railway travels from Bolzano. The earth pyramids of Ritten, strangely towering red moraines whose summits are crowned by stones. These originated when hard granite stones were encased in the loam of Ice Age moraines. The loam towers up beneath the stones. The Trotzberg proudly guards the intimidating entrance to Val Gardena, where the old language of Ladino is still spoken. Further on, the valley opens up and leads to Ortejai St. Ulrich, the home of mountaineer Louis Trenker, who made his most beautiful films here. Val Gardena is the home of world-famous woodcarvers, great masters of this art who create religious objects as well as practical everyday items. The village of San Cristina has 16,000 inhabitants and revolves completely around tourism. Its houses are colourfully decorated and covered with carved wooden balconies. At the end of the valley at high altitude is the village of Selva. Here, one can experience the sublime tranquility of this incredible mountain world. The small cemetery next to the village church is the final resting place of many a tragic mountaineer. The road snakes its way up into the glorious mountain world, in the direction of the Grödner Joch. But the road is closed. For most of the year, the long-lying snow prevents further progress into the mountainous terrain. Bressanone is the main village in Isaak Valley and is located on the main route to the south. The city originated in the Stufels district. The old town square is dominated by its historic cathedral and a well. The bishops ruled this city for almost 1,000 years, and its buildings indicate the past prosperity of its citizens. In what was a mud-covered valley in 500 BC, there was a fortified Retish settlement here, a local tribe. The medieval character of the city, with its opulent and well-restored houses, alleys and arcades, has survived the ravages of time. A short walk leads to the Chorherrenstift Neustift, which nestles on a sunny mountain slope in the Seine Valley. It has a large inside yard and a heavy bell tower. The late Baroque library contains works of art that have managed to survive both revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. The Baroque monastery church contains frescoes of the Rococo painter Matthäus Günther. It is also believed that this is the burial place of the poet and singer Oswald von Wolkenstein. The Gothic cloister is adorned with precious frescoes, also attributed to the master artist Matthäus Günther. Brunico is the main village of Puster Valley. In 1250, Bishop Bruno of Bressanone built this strongly fortified city and castle against the monarchs of the Tyrol. The rows of houses in the Stadtgasse date back to the 15th and 16th centuries and make it one of the most beautiful streets in the Tyrol. High on a rock, at the entrance to the Valle Aurina, is Castle Taufers, one of the mightiest fortified buildings in the Tyrol. Today's well-maintained and beautifully furnished castle hides the fact that its rooms were once plundered and the entire castle fell into disrepair. Here the fairy tales of old become reality. This is a beautiful mountain valley of classic proportions. The landscape is of lush green mountain meadows, pretty farmhouses and dreamy mountain pastures. A fairy tale valley. The valley becomes increasingly narrow until there is only enough room for the road and the creek. Then the end of the valley is reached. Once, it was also the last sign of civilization. Up here in the remoteness of this mountain world, age-old traditions are still maintained. wood carving and lace making. This is the end of a journey across a land full of beauty, history and culture. Alto Adige, the southern Tyrol.